here we are in a world of struggle in so many ways. We need to find new ways to deal with lack of trust, high stress, the need for collaboration. There's so much going on right now, and I think it's beautiful that at least we can dream and we can see what's going on with different methodologies that are bringing hope and are actually fixing and solving many of the issues we are facing. So today we are here to talk about pro-social and especially how we apply pro-social as a methodology in business and how we build learning journeys in order to activate the essence of human beings, which is all around relationship building. So for that, we have an amazing group of experts and insights. And I would love to start with Paul Atkins. Actually, Paul Atkins is the co-founder and the director of pro-social, author and psychologist, really focus on how organizations and how we can be organized in order to maximize our potential. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And Paul, thank you so much for leading and for creating something that is so amazing and is going to be so helpful for so many people. So why don't we start, Paul, going deeper into this kind of assessment that I made about how much we are seeing high levels of stress, low levels of trust, the need for more collaboration. What is your view, and how is pro-social ready to help us navigate that landscape?
Thanks so much, Lewis. It's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you for this opportunity. Well, pro-social is a way of building more trust and collaboration and inclusion in business groups and government organisations and groups and networks of all sorts, really. So it's really a response to the situations that we find ourselves in. Obviously, in answer to your question, we have COVID, we have massive change in social organisation, increasing distrusting governments and government activity, increasing roles for organisations to be playing in social and environmental action. So businesses are being pulled in all sorts of different directions, which is obviously causing a great deal of volatility and uncertainty as a leader in an organisation. Pro-social, I just might say a little bit about what pro-social is so that we know what we're talking about. If I can start with that. I really think of it as three things. It is a method for helping to build trust and collaboration, but it's also a movement of people that are interested in alternatives to traditional hierarchically organised command and control kind of organised organisations. So it's a movement, a cohort of people that are learning from one another and sharing ideas and data and so forth. It's also a research program. We've recently been funded for a very large international study of communities implementing pro-social. So what does pro-social do? Well, in a nutshell, it's really about building a power with cultures, partnering, what Rian Eisler calls partnering cultures rather than domination cultures in groups. And it draws upon the sciences of well-being, of cooperation, of behaviour change, and is all about creating a sense of, first of all, creating a sense of genuinely shared identity and purpose, but then building in the elements that are key for supporting long-term trust and collaboration, like, for example, inclusion in decision-making. How do we do that in an effective and efficient way where people not only feel included, but really are genuinely included in making the decisions that are going to impact upon them? We also explore, it's quite a holistic system. We explore elements of conflict resolution and how we track performance and how we ensure equity, all of these elements, but they're all underneath this idea of creating a culture and environment that's about partnership and listening and dialogue and engagement and inclusion, rather than the more traditional methods that have been used in business, largely in business, the last 50 to 100 years. The last thing I want to say about it is, if I may, is that it's a multi-level approach. So we're really interested in the I guess three main levels, if you like: the inner work of the individual, what people do in relationships and in teams, and also the organisational culture. And so we're working on all three of those levels at the same time, because all three of those levels, the system can contribute to the degree of trust and collaboration and well-being that people experience.
Thanks so much for that, Paul. I was wondering, listening to you and having Duncan and Robert here as well with a lot of experience, if we can build a bit on the methodology and showcase some examples or some work that you may have work on, or that you know about, where pro-social might be working or might be helpful.
Yeah, certainly, Lewis. I'm very happy to make a comment here. The points that Paul made about the work having these three focuses about well-being, the science of collaboration and behaviour change, and operating at multiple levels has been a real experience for me. I mean, I personally, I'm a behavioural scientist. I've worked with Paul for over a decade now, implementing pro-social principles. But one of the contexts that I've been working in is originally with systems engineers who have been doing long-term innovation roadmaps, trying to get very complex systems to actually collaborate to realise change. And integrating some of their thinking with the core design principles and the need to become psychologically flexible, which are core to pro-social. Over the last few years, I've worked in the Pacific with a whole range of governments across the region, as well as businesses, NGOs, like-minded governments from around the world. In 2017, the Pacific governments signed the Boy Declaration, which was a declaration between them to collaborate, which goes straight to the heart of our discussion today, to collaborate in order to tackle all manner of security challenges. 4 broad classes of security challenge. One was climate-related issues. The other one was human security issues. The third one was infrastructure. And the last one was more traditional forms of security. And during that period, I had the opportunity to consult with a number of governments, and all of them had their own strategic plans. And many of them were a similar formula. They had done an analysis of the challenge they were facing. They'd brought to bear on it some kind of philosophy of change. And often there was a huge list of recommended, I guess, opportunities to respond, like a big shopping list. And I noticed that everybody was competing to try and corral whatever funding was available to them to protect their own interests within the context of the work that had to be done. There wasn't a lot of collaboration, even though that's what they spoke about. So the work that we did with them, implementing the design principles and also cultivating psychological flexibility, had a profound impact, because it meant slowing the whole conversation down. And as Paul was saying, focusing on shared needs, the whole idea of power with. So over a period of 8 months, in Fiji particularly, we involved multiple government organisations, businesses, NGOs, churches, councils of chiefs, a couple of other like-minded government organisations. And we spent quite a bit of time asking, what are the fundamental needs here that will sustain life at every level in the system? Whether they're the needs of a government official, right down to those living in a village who are wanting to ensure that they've got food on the table. And that process of slowing things down, cultivating the capacity to listen for value and needs, and then table them and organize all effort in order to meet everybody's needs by figuring out how to make decisions, making sure that things are equitable, monitoring what was going on. It was quite extraordinary. I remember at one point, after we'd had a 5-day dialogue, the stakeholders who had been actually at loggerheads for quite some years said to me that the change was extraordinary as a result of slowing down and listening for shared needs. He said, and this chap said to me, I realized at one point that we were using different language to talk about the same thing. It was extraordinary. And once we had really understood the deep human and environmental needs of the others that we had to collaborate with, we couldn't stop them from wanting to collaborate. Very powerful.
I think, just from my perspective, I don't, not a contextual behavioral science, so I don't have the, the academic background with respect to this, but I think for me, what I've learned and its practical application is that pro-social sort of gives you the ability, and they've spoken about taking the perspective of others and being able to recognize that there is a problem. And then it gives me, the ability to be able to identify the cause of that problem, and then the motivation to actually help someone, others fix the problem or address the problem or challenge. And I think that to me was really, really practical, because I come from financial services side of the business. And so I'm always looking at that practical application. And this is something I think that absolutely resonated with me, because we talk about it being it's a process or a methodology. I think it's absolutely inherent in every single one of us, but I think pro-social is we're able to show how to release. We all want to cooperate. It's inherent in us, but we don't know how to. And I'm talking to an organization where they posed the question. They said we have to reflect and challenge our stereotypes, and they said, but how? And I think there's a lot of those sorts of questions. We need to do this, and I'd love to be able to work with in this environment, but how? And I think pro-social we're able to show the way of how to do that. And I think you spoke about trust earlier. I think humans, we all like to believe that we are trustworthy ourselves, and I think we sort of are happy to engage with others that we perceive to be trustworthy. And that is through sort of the quality of the connection that you have with that person. So I suppose a simple way of thinking about it is it's the complete opposite to antisocial. So, it stimulates social functioning and a connection, and the quality of that connection, and the, that willingness, voluntary sort of willingness to help others. And all of that builds trust and builds a quality of a connection. And I think pro-social is the way that we can demonstrate how to do that.
Listening to you both, Duncan and Robert, and the example, gives me a lot of hope, because it's really I felt a lot of space in pro-social, like creating space and a lot of connection, individual connection, and hearing that from the science, like it's really an inner part of who we are, cooperation. I feel it's a great, we need to remember that. It's especially right now, with all the war, the context, it's really something that is, and the challenge for companies as well, that are very put under stress, to remember that it's really something that we have, each of us, So my experience as an executive coach and leadership, doing a lot of leadership development, is find that the culture of the company, and as well as they want to do, is very challenged by this the ability and this difficulties to create space. Just the idea of create space for conversation. So that's why I like very much what you were sharing also, Paul, earlier, is the idea of a journey. That's something that we create an intentional space for several months to start to become more human a little bit, you know, like I feel like it's like reconnecting with who you are as an inner nature. And for leaders today that are really stressed and are challenged by teams that are all over the world and global, to give them the tool to and the approach and the mindset and the experience as well to engage with this with pro-social. That's just what comes to me is really very needy. They need this a lot, and it's very give me a lot of hope as well, you know, in this regard. So it's so I have one question, like focusing more about science. I mean, because you both of you comes from the science side of it. What is the most updated science around like trust and collaboration? What do we know that now that how does it work? I mean, out there, because I hear a lot of leaders saying, yes, trust, I don't trust, I trust. I mean, it's like something that we, so what can you share with us about how you can along this journey be able to have group trusting each other and being very eager to collaborate and can't stop. I like you when you say they can't stop collaborating. So it's so could you share something around that?
Would you like me to start?
Yes, go ahead, Pauline.
So one thing that I think is really important is something that Robert touched on, and that's this notion of need satisfaction. A really key part of building trust in groups is ensuring that people's individual needs are met at the same time as the needs of the group are met, and that people can see that that's going to happen. Because trust is really all about safety, isn't it? It's all about being able to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, to take a risk on a new idea, and know that you're not going to be punished for that, that instead you're going to be supported and richly reinforced for, you know, being human, making an effort and your genuine good intent. So there's a very rich and deep science of basic psychological needs that people have. And it boils down to three main things. The need for self-determination, to be able to endorse one's choices that's being freely made. The need for belonging, to actually feel that I'm part of a group where we evolved in the context of small nomadic foraging groups where there was a high degree of belonging and a high degree of self-determination, actually. They were deeply egalitarian groups that I'm talking about more than 99% of human history was spent in the context of these small egalitarian foraging nomadic groups. So we really evolved for this context, and we've developed our emotional skills, our social emotional skills in that context. The three main needs then are self-determination, belonging, and also competence, the agency element, to be able to feel as though I can be effective in an environment. And all the evidence suggests that if you can meet those needs at the individual level, you are going to build, people are going to be more likely to be pro-social, more likely to want to trust, to want to collaborate if those needs are met. It's extraordinarily powerful. And we haven't really talked about this idea of, we mentioned core design principles, but I might just mention that the core design principles, from one perspective, are really about making sure that those needs are satisfied at the same time as the whole system can work. So the core design principles are just about things like shared identity and purpose, equity, inclusion in decision-making, fast and fair conflict resolution, responding well to transgressions and so forth. So, but they're also about how those things happen at the next level up. And that's that's what I was saying before about multi-level. This is not just about individuals in teams. And Robert's example was a beautiful illustration of how we can use these exact same core design principles to look at highly complex networks of groups of groups. These principles apply equally well. And the reason they apply so well is because they meet basic psychological needs, which we've kind of forgotten about in our strange economic model of the human as a kind of selfish utility maximizer, which has become the dominant narrative in business particularly over the last 50 or 60 years. And it's just alien to life. It is absolutely alien to life. One of the things I love about the World Happiness Foundation is that you're trying to reconnect with, what's life based on? It's this human connection, self-determination, and the possibilities of expressing our skills and competence in context.
Paul, that's you just reminded me of some work that we've been doing with an organisation called PLE, which is in America, in fact. It's an organisation that is devoted to education in healthcare, particularly for families with children who are challenged. And we've been doing a learning journey with them for probably about 5 months now. And it began with the CEO and one of their senior leaders. And in order to get to the heart of what the need is, we spent some time crafting what's called a strategic agenda setting question. Like, this is a really evocative question that is chosen for several reasons. One is it pulls for a future that is desired, but also it pulls for the intrinsic interests of those who are custodians of that future. We spent some time, and their strategic agenda setting question was, I wonder what it would look like in 10 to 20 years' time if there was truly a value-based governance system within the healthcare sector. And value-based governance had a very rich meaning in terms, exactly as Paul was just saying, in terms of the value of being physically and psychologically healthy, the value of actually being able to act autonomously and with agency within the context of your work and the system, but also the value of collaborating at multiple levels. Now, the value-based, and it was really evocative. I mean, I could tell once they'd uttered this question, the conversation just took off, because it was contrasted with the current system, which they framed as bargain hunting. Even though they used the word, the current system is value-based, really all the behaviours are bargain hunt. It's about bargain hunting. So the funders, the regulators of the system, the board members, and right down to the staff, they were just trying to deal with the competitive nature of the system. So anyway, they took this question to the system. And to cut a long story short, when Gretchen, who's the CEO, came back, she said, you should have seen the board respond when I asked them, what do you think of a truly value-based governance system could look like in 10 to 20 years? She said, even asking that question had them start to reframe their own suite of responsibilities as board members and the qualities of relationships they needed to develop with everyone else in the system that they're a part of. And they took the question right down to the shop room floor, and people who are dealing with families and their children. And they say, well, value for me would be this. And each of them spoke about value in one of the 3 to 4 terms that Paul spoke about. It's autonomy, the right kind of relationship, the sense of agency, but also physical well-being. That kind of was folded in. As individuals, we need psychological and physical well-being. As a collective, we need healthy environments and robust value chains that are considerate of those 4 things. And of course, the work now is, what are the social protocols that we need to implement in order to move in the direction of creating a value-based governance system, which is where all the design principles come in. Okay, so now we've figured that out at each level. How are we going to make decisions? Whether it's involving children and their families, or actually involving government regulators and funders. And how are we going to monitor and track our journey? And when we go off track, how are we going to get back on track and restore health and well-being rather than act punitively? It's very powerful, very practical, and very powerful and liberating conversation.
Yeah, I think Paul mentioned something earlier, Lewis, around and Valerie, around I don't think you can underestimate that power around a shared purpose. If you truly connect to that, and I'm part of a network of organizations that are trying to improve, bring about systemic change for people that live with ADHD. And it's interesting. There's organizations that we've absolutely got the same purpose. We all want to improve the lives of those impacted, and it's universal. But they're all doing similar stuff, all doing the same stuff, almost to a point where slightly competing. And we just started the conversation, and it was a bit like Robert was saying, was that, we haven't gone so far as the big defining question yet, but it was a moment, a defining moment, because once we spoke about how important that purpose was, through the conversation, they realized that the purpose was more important than their individual endeavors and what they were doing, while they were recognized and respected, to the point that we said that everything that we do, there's 10 organizations, if we all continue what we're doing, yes, we make an impact at our local level, but we're not really bringing about systemic change. What if we reshifted, and we changed the way we operate, and instead of competing, we did complementary activities. So I do this part of the puzzle, you do that, but when the puzzle comes together, then we advance the purpose. And it's really, they're starting to really, redefine what their own little strategic intent is, to the point that we will now be doing activities. I will stop doing this, you do that, we'll do that, you do. And we are now working in we're starting the conversation, and they're getting it around, if we carry on competing, we're not going anywhere. But if we complement each other, then the puzzle comes together, and we achieve the higher purpose. And just connecting to that purpose was, you're right. If we really want to do that, then we've got to stop, being so sort of inwardly focused on what's important in our communities. Rather, it's a case of that thing is bigger than all of us, so it's more important. And you can't underestimate that that shared sense of something that you want to achieve.
That's powerful, Duncan. I really, what I hear is also the idea that pro-social can be applied to a team, a simple team with a leader. It could be applied inside in an organization, a business. It could be different entity. It could be the whole company. And there is also the stakeholder example that Robert, you express around, a common, space. And Duncan right now around, instead of competing, let's collaborating, let's get together and do different things because we're sharing a common purpose. So it's really, I can see the agility of a pro-social approach in terms of ability to be extremely, everywhere there is cooperation, everywhere there is common goal and challenge, it could be a very powerful approach. Yes, Paul, you want to?
Yeah, I just really reflecting on what Duncan and Robert both said. One thing that they both said was, in so many contexts, we pay lip service to collaboration and shared purpose and all these things, and you'd think we'd be doing it well, but we don't. And why don't we? I think part of the reason is because we don't really have safe ways of sharing the difficult emotions that are associated with, if you're really going to collaborate. There's things like, I might lose some power here, or if you're really going to align on shared purpose, there's opportunities to listen to people that have really diverse views, and you might think, I can possibly endorse that. But you know, you have to spend time in getting underneath to, well, what do they really care about here beyond the strategies? What are the basic values and needs? And that's hard emotional work. And I think this is where you know, our Pro-Social World's mission aligns well with the World Happiness Foundation. Is what how do we help people to build those skills to self-regulate in the context of these difficult emotions? And Pro-Social World makes use of a very simple tool that's drawn from acceptance and behaviour training that helps people articulate not just what they care about, but also what they're afraid of, or what they're concerned about, or what they're unhappy about in some way or other. And it gives people a way of safely bringing that into the conversation. As we all know, in businesses and government contexts, most of the time that sort of thing is just off limits. It's unprofessional, it's not allowed. And of course, we don't want to dwell in it. We don't want to, you know, sort of get stuck in it. But if we don't allow it into the conversation, we're never going to be able to build trust. Because I remember working with a client once in a government agency, and she was saying that it's like Swiss cheese around here. There's so many undiscussed conversations. They're like holes in the conversation everywhere, and it's like navigating a minefield, trying to work out what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. Well, all of that is alien to life. How could we possibly build genuine trust and collaboration when there's such a high degree of undiscussable material? So what we need to be able to do is to create a context where it's not only safe, but also efficient to bring our whole selves to the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you, Paul, and having been in business at the top executive level for many years, something that we have now that probably we didn't have 15, 18 years ago is what I call collective global awareness of what's going on. And normally in business, you need a burning platform to do things. It's like, I always remember the global CEO at Deloitte. I was the CMO there. He was always really focused on the burning platform. What's going on? So what do we really need to fix? Because if we have to fix something, then people are going to get together. So he was always like, what is the burning platform? Okay, well, I think right now what we are not missing is burning platforms. It's so many. So now we have to pick which one. But we have something that we didn't have before with this, the collective global awareness and speaking from the heart. And this is what few leaders expected 20 years ago, is how people are talking from the heart. So I think this is a beautiful moment for Pro-Social. And I know that this learning journey that we are co-creating is going to be fantastic. But why don't we actually finalize this discussion, Paul, focusing on the learning journey? What are we planning? What can people expect? What can they learn and when?
Wonderful, thank you. Well, we're still finalising the dates, but we're hoping to have this up and running by May. The learning journey will be an 8-week collective experiential process, and we're going to be orienting around a question. We haven't quite finalised it yet, but we want to help. Actually, the reason for that is because in part it will depend on who's coming, because this is going to be an emergent experience. But the question will be something like, how do we keep calm in the storm of all that's going on, COVID, climate change, massive social disruption, war now, while building trust and collaboration in business and organisations? And so we're really trying to combine the skills of the World Happiness Foundation and Pro-Social World in both the inner work and the social work of building trust and collaboration. And so what we'll do is we'll start with orienting around a shared purpose and identity for the group, which will be a question of some sort that we really want to explore. And we'll introduce some of the pro-social principles, depending on the sorts of questions and interests that people have in the group. We might bring in insights from the sciences of happiness, but certainly also from the science of cooperation. But it's not going to be a didactic course. It's not going to be about, here's the curriculum and it's all laid out. The idea is to introduce some material which is highly provocative and useful and gets people to think in new directions about their systems. And then we'll see how the course unfolds. Each week we'll meet as a facilitation team. And I should say that, unfortunately, the 3 women that are involved in our facilitation team couldn't make it today, which has led to a situation where it's sounding like it's all men. But we will have a mix of men and women involved in the facilitation team. And we'll be meeting each week and exploring the sorts of issues that came up, and we will be responding by taking it in whatever direction it needs to go. There'll be opportunities for people to work in small groups. There'll be opportunities for people to define a product they would like to create for themselves out of the learning journey of some sort, not just at the individual level, but maybe at a small team level. We'd love to invite people to come along as individuals. You'll be very welcome, but you'd also be welcome to come along if you're a small team that might like to work on your own process and build the skills that would allow you to take these ideas and techniques back into your organisation to make change there. We're all about empowering people to take the ideas and develop them themselves in their own context. We're not about, sort of constraining it in any way, because this is all about working in the way that life works, which is essentially collaborative. Does that answer the question, Louise?
I think so. Valerie, are we missing any information that maybe we want to share with the audience about the learning?
No, I don't. I think we said a lot. Thank you, because there's really very excited by this collaboration and cooperation with you. And I feel it's really from the perspective of consultant, executive coach or coach that are inside company, we are observer of the needs. And I felt it's really, I'm excited about ProSocial for this. It's like you encompass what is really is going to be a core, a catalyst for really change, which, at the individual and collective level, which I really love. Let's be clear. So we are ready for soon ready and ready for it. So thank you for. I think we have said we have in an hour. I think we said what we compact, intense, but it's clear. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, so thank you so much, Duncan, Robert, Paul, and of course Valerie, for this explanation. Everybody's invited to join this learning journey that we are going to be kicking off very soon. And I would say we need you all. we have to be more pro-social than ever before. And here we have the methodology to achieve it in business and life. So see you in the learning journey soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone.